Today, I'm going to try something I've never sewn before, shearing. Hello, and welcome to Tears of Joy Creative. If you're new to my channel, I like to do sewing tutorials and mostly upcycle clothing into something totally different. I've also been going through this book, which has pictures of clothing that I have found on Pinterest that I would like to remake for myself. And today's video is going to be a remake of this dress. And as you can see here on the top, it has what's called shearing, a technique where you gather the fabric using elastic. Now there are three ways to do shearing. One is to use elastic thread like this in your bobbin, and as you sew, it will gather the fabric together. The second way is to use a 1/4 inch elastic and you stitch through the elastic as you sew, which will also gather the fabric. And the third way is to sew skinny channels and then insert the 1/4 inch elastic through it, which is the way I'm going to do this particular garment. But first, let's talk about the fabric that I'm going to use for this dress. For the top layer, I'm using this black and white checkered dress, and it came with a sash, which is great because they will be for the straps. The middle layer will be this red plaid dress, and for the bottom layer will be this black and white plaid. So now the plan is to take each garment apart and make as much of a piece of fabric for each one as I can, because this dress doesn't have any shape. It's basically the band at the top with the shearing and 3 skirts sewn together at a seam, which will be about here. So now it's time to take all of these apart.
One eternity later.
I'm starting with the bottom layer, and the first thing I notice is that I need to remove the fronts and flip them around like this. Then cut off the shoulders and bottom to make it more even. Next, I'm sewing both sleeves onto one side to get as long of a piece of fabric as I can. And here is the first skirt sewn together. It's okay, but not very full. I think it should work, being the bottom layer, but we'll see as the other skirts develop. For the second layer, I'm basically doing the same process by adding the sleeves to the sides to get as much width as I can out of this fabric. And here's the second layer pinned on, which I really don't like because it's too short. And there isn't much I can do to make it longer since I only have so much fabric to work with in these dresses. And I quickly realized as I was attempting to sew together the top layer that while I may be able to get enough fabric width to make a gathered skirt, the lengths are off and there isn't enough in these dresses to lengthen them. Well, this just isn't going to work as an upcycle project, at least not with the garments that I have. Now I did go through my stash in the closet to see what I had, and I found 4 very full skirts that would work, but they're more of a Spanish style skirt with the rows of gathered fabric, and that's not the look I'm going for, so I can't use them. And I did go down to a couple local thrift stores to see if I could find anything close to what I have, any more shirt dresses, and they just don't have anything. And I did look through all of the sheets and bedding and stuff like that, but the only thing they have are plain white, maybe some solid colors, and mostly kids' cartoon prints, and that's not going to work either. Now, I could go on Poshmark or eBay and look for garments that I could add to what I'm doing, but I really need to see things in person, and I don't want to wait for something to be delivered, as I'm trying very hard to be consistent with my content in posting every 2 weeks. So I have decided to make this out of brand new fabric. And the first place I went to was Walmart. Our Walmart up the street has fabric, but I have to tell you, they've gotten rid of so much of their fabric. I was surprised at the lack of fabric that they have. And mostly what they have is crafting supplies and sewing notions. And then I went to a place that I forgot has fabric, and that's Hobby Lobby. And I learned something new. Did you know that at Hobby Lobby, every other week, all their fabric is 40% off? And the prices for yardage like this was actually very reasonable. So this one I think was $5 a yard, $5.39. This one was $4.79, and this one came out to $3.59. I went back and recalculated approximately the length that these skirts should be. And the top layer should be 24 inches long, the middle 30, and the bottom 36. This is going to be the bottom layer, this is going to be the middle layer, and this is going to be the top layer for the skirt, the bodice, and the straps. And I am just madly in love with these colors. And normally I wear mostly burgundies and reds. I'm also a big fall person, so this is going to be a beautiful dress. So now I can go and cut out my project and get started putting it together. So after holding the plaid around me, I'm not going to lie, it was a bit much at first. I don't usually wear plaids, so I spent a good while playing with the layers of how I wanted this dress to look. And I ended up going with my first instinct to have the plaid on the top layer. First, I cut the length of the top layer, which will be 24 inches long. Then I spent a whole lot of time trying to figure out just how I'm going to cut these skirts until I decided that make a mock-up first to see how this would hang, because if I just cut a rectangular piece, it's not going to fall the way I want it to and be gathered here. There's only one slight problem. I don't have enough fabric. Now I bought 2 yards of the plaid and 1.5 yards of the orange and the yellow print. And in actuality, I need about another 1.5 yards of each fabric to cut each skirt. So tomorrow I will go back to Hobby Lobby to get some more fabric. But I have enough to cut at least the fronts of each of the skirts, plus the bodice and the straps.
The next day.
And I did that. And then I got up this morning and I went to Hobby Lobby, and I could not find any of those fabrics except for the orange. I did get 2 more yards of orange, but I can't get the rest. And I went to multiple Hobby Lobbies, and it was seasonal fabric. I think one of them was in clearance. And so I had to make some decisions. And so the yellow is now gone. And instead, I have this really pretty orange and red floral print, which goes very nicely with this orange. So this will still be the bottom layer, and this will be the middle layer. The one that I was so disappointed in was the plaid. I am so in love with this brown plaid, and it's nowhere. It doesn't exist. It's all sold out. But I found something else, something that matches really well, and that's this orange and green plaid. And what's nice is it does go well with all 3 colors, because as you can see, this floral print has a lot of green in it. And yes, I know I've already cut the other pieces, and they will just go in the scrap bin for now, except for the orange piece. Now I can use this. It's just going to have a center back seam down the back from doing the trapezoid angle. So let this be a lesson that you really do need to know how much fabric you need to buy when making any garment. Cutting out the new skirt pieces was pretty easy. I just used the first set I cut as my pattern. Just don't ask me why I'm not using the yellow print piece as my pattern for this new print that I bought, because I really can't answer that at this moment. There are a lot of things I did on this project that made absolutely no sense, except that I did work hard to make sure my plaid lined up on the side seams of the skirt. For the top, I only had enough fabric for the outside layer, so I'm using the original brown plaid for the inner layer. So do you want to know how you can tell I don't make my own patterns or really have a clue as to what I'm doing? Well, I realized when I was laying in bed that if I sew these skirt patterns together with this point on it like I have, it's just going to hang down at a point on the side. And so I have to trim off the corners of these skirts. So when they hang, it'll be pretty much straight across the bottom. But I'm getting better and I'm learning. Just like that. And just like that, they're done. Ta-da! And yes, I saved you from all the boring footage of sewing 2 seams together and serging off the edges and pressing them flat. And they need to be about an inch shorter, but you get the gist. And this will be more gathered in like this once the bodice is done. So now it's time for the fun part of doing the top and doing the shearing. And here I'm sewing the 2 layers together and then serging off all of the edges. Time to finally sew in all the 1/4 inch elastic channels for the elastic. So I have this bad habit of doing things the hard way, and when I learned the different techniques in doing shearing, I felt the easiest way was to sew the skinny channels and insert the elastic through. But that's really not going to work very well if you don't have small safety pins to thread the elastic through. I was trying to use my long tube turner to pull the elastic through, and as I did that, of course, the fabric gathered together, and it made it almost impossible for me to keep threading my turner down the next channel. But I did not give up, since I didn't really have any other way to thread the elastic through. I could not go to the store because everything was shut down thanks to Hurricane Helene, and I have been very sick with a bad flu virus. But after several hours, here it is. And let me tell you what, this is the biggest pain in the butt I've ever done in my life. Now I understand why people put the elastic thread in the bobbin and stitch it that way, or they just stitch through the elastic and make it gather. I think I have my elastic too small, as when I put this across my bust, it's going to be very snug. I think I might have to just take the elastic out and start over again, which is fine. Elastic is not expensive. And this is all a big learning experience for me. This is something that, like I said in the beginning, I have not ever done this. Yes, I have inserted elastic into a waistband, but not done it like this. And so I think I'm going to have to sleep on it and figure it out, and we'll see what happens tomorrow. And yes, I did in fact remove all the strips of elastic so I could do this process all over again with longer elastic. Only this time, I now have some small safety pins that I'm going to use to thread the elastic through about halfway. Stitch through one end, and then pull the elastic through to the other end and sew it down. Ta-da! It's done. And I thought this was going to be much easier than putting elastic thread in my bobbin, which next time, I'm sure I'm going to do it totally different than this. But I really like the way that this turned out. And the safety pins are where my straps are going to go, which is what I'm going to make now. I think the straps are the easiest part about this dress. Just sew the sides and one end together, turn it right side out, press it flat, and close the other end. Ta-da! The top's all done. And aren't these straps and bows just the cutest? I love the way this top has turned out. Now, it's time to sew all the skirts on. But first, I'm going to serge off the extra fabric that is on the bottom of the bodice. I've already gone ahead and sewn all three skirts together at the top, and now it's just as easy as lining up the center back and side seams and then stretching the bodice to fit the skirt opening as I sew them all together. My husband was kind enough to help me with leveling the skirts so I can make the hems somewhat even. Once I got them cut, I'm serging off the edges because the fabrics fray very easily, and then I'm sewing a 1/4 inch hem to finish them off. And now it's finally time for a photo shoot. Well, if you've made it this far in the video, I thank you for watching me make all of my many mistakes. So let's do a recap. I really do like the way the dress has turned out, and I feel that it is very close to the picture that I started out with. I did realize that after cutting the skirts the way that I did, that these skirts were probably cut from a circle skirt pattern. But I don't know if I would have wanted 3 full circle skirts in one dress. I think that would have been a little much. I do like the fullness and the way the dress has turned out. With the shearing on the bodice, would I ever do it again this way? Probably not. I would probably just sew through the 1/4" elastic strips. And I did not follow my rule of thumb when it comes to measuring elastic, and that is to take the circumference and then minus about 15% in the length of elastic that you cut. I really do like the fact that this is a fully lined bodice, but I don't think I would do this technique again with threading all of the elastic through all of the channels. But I do have all my safety pins now, so there might be a possibility of me doing it once again. I do like all the fall colors, but this dress is going to take a little bit of getting used to because I have never worn anything this orange before. And next time I will be much better prepared at knowing how much fabric I actually need to buy when it comes to making anything from scratch. Kind of like knowing the difference in being able to make an upcycled garment and knowing how much fabric you have to start with. And the fact that I should have known that the 3 dresses I had were not going to be enough for this garment. But that was before I realized how the skirts actually needed to be cut. And I am thankful to have made my discovery about Hobby Lobby and their 40% off every other week on their fabric, and that their prices start out very reasonable to begin with. And I feel better making something from scratch versus going into the stores and the malls and buying something that comes from the fast fashion industry. I would like to make all of these as upcycled projects, but sometimes that's just not possible with what's available in the thrift stores. But I do know that making something from scratch is going to be unique and personalized, which I don't think I would be able to find anything like this out in the stores. So thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then please hit the like button and consider subscribing to my channel as the sewing and madness continue.